When a country runs out of money, the world sends help. That help comes with a list, and the list was never written by the country that needs it. The question is not why the deal gets signed. The question is why there is no other door, and why the terms never seem to change. You are watching Suharto, Jakarta, January 15th, 1998. He has governed Indonesia for 32 years. He is signing a 50-point document at a table surrounded by cameras. Behind him stands a man with his arms crossed. The man is not Indonesian. He is the managing director of the International Monetary Fund. Nobody asked him to uncross his arms. This is money memory. The past is still running. 1944. Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. 44 nations design the post-war financial order. Two competing visions. John Maynard Keynes proposes symmetry. Creditors and debtors share the burden of adjustment equally. Harry Dexter White proposes a dollar-anchored system, votes weighted by financial contribution. The United States holds 2/3 of the world's gold. White's plan wins. The asymmetry is written in before the first loan is made. 54 years later, Suharto finds himself dependent on what that institution can provide. Indonesia's rupiah has lost 70% of its value in 6 months. Foreign capital is leaving. The government cannot cover its external obligations. The IMF is the only creditor with the capacity and the mandate. At the time, this made sense. The 50-point list arrives before the money clears. Close 16 state banks immediately. Remove subsidies on food and fuel. Raise interest rates to defend the rupiah. The logic holds internally. A borrower in crisis must demonstrate capacity to repay before a creditor commits. Suharto signs. The money moves. Within weeks, rice prices double. Kerosene, what ordinary families in Jakarta used to cook, becomes unaffordable overnight. The bank closures trigger a run on every institution still standing. Depositors line up, shelves thin out. The terms Suharto accepted 6 weeks ago are now legible in every market, every household, every queue for fuel. The architecture behind those terms had been settled in 1944. Voting in the IMF is weighted by financial contribution. The United States holds 16.5% of votes. All major decisions require an 85% supermajority to pass. 16.5 is enough to block 85. Indonesia, with a fraction of that weight, had signed conditions it could not have blocked and could not renegotiate. By May 1998, riots break out across Indonesia. More than 1,000 people are dead. Suharto resigns after 32 years in power. GDP contracts 13% in a single year. The poverty rate more than triples. The IMF acknowledges the conditions went too far. The acknowledgement arrives after the damage is done. By 2013, Greece loses more than 25% of its GDP inside the same structure. Unemployment reaches 27%. The IMF acknowledges its growth projections were too optimistic. The output is already gone. By 2025, Argentina signs its 23rd IMF agreement since 1958. It defaulted in 2020. The debt is still outstanding. By 2023, more than half of low-income countries are in debt distress or at high risk, the highest proportion since the 1990s. Developing nations pay $1.4 trillion servicing foreign debt that year. Not reducing it, servicing it. After each crisis, the IMF acknowledges the conditions were too tight. After each acknowledgement, the next program carries the same structure. The wording changes, the terms don't. And if this sounds familiar, it should. Sri Lanka, 2022. Its first sovereign default in history. In the 12 months before the default, the government spends an estimated 70% of its revenue on debt service alone, not on infrastructure, not on hospitals. An IMF program arrives in 2023. It stabilizes the exchange rate. It does not restore what has been cut. The photograph from Jakarta traveled around the world. The man with his arms crossed has been replaced many times since 1998. The institution still holds the terms. The borrower still adjusts. Money memory. The system remembers.